Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I'm your host today, current New Jersey Devils defenseman. Our guest today is a mentor of mine, grown friend, Pierre Debar. Pierre, this podcast will come out off the back of, I just had a podcast with Patrick McEwen, who does the Oxygen Advantage, does a lot of the nasal breathing that we work with. But I know you and I have also explored open mouth breathing and sort of like, let's call it heart zone activation. Where I'll let you get into some of the nitty gritty of the details of what that feels like and looks like and how we're able to access that intelligence. But we're coming off of, it's been a year of COVID. I know my goal in starting this podcast was to help a lot of youth athletes and hockey players. I know it's something that you've been employed to do with all of your personal work. How are you out there in the field today? Like, how are you out there helping? I know you've done a lot of work with the University of Wisconsin hockey players. You see a lot of junior kids. What's the sentiment out there? Have people been able to, grow during this time, or are you experiencing a lot of stuckness that you're working through with people?
Well, first of all, great to be on here, Connor. And I love this. I love your approach and your curiosity towards life.
Well, you're a big part of it, by the way. I used to, seriously, just with your range, right? Like, Pierre, you've taught me about, I skipped over some of the steps, bad host, but I first approached Pierre as I was early in my pro career. I was really trying to bring my body to the next level. I thought that that's what was really limiting me from my pro experience from being what it was. And looking back, I've probably first approached you for massage and some of the hydrotherapy that you did. And then between the emotional work, the grounding work, a lot of the breath work that we did, I started to find that for sure a lot of my physical issues actually went away, like some of the trials and tribulations from training. But much greater than that, I had real in stressful times applications available from the skill sets that we learned, whether it was the big, armpit to armpit sort of breath work. My personal curiosity, it was something that wasn't integrated at that time in my life. I wanted to be this soldier. I wanted to be this, turn this all off, and just go out there and be a warrior. And I know that archetype, hits close to home for you. That's not who I am. And it was draining a lot of energy. That closed mindedness, that lack of respect for my gifts, was showing up in my relationships and in my work.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail there, which is we lose more energy in our emotions than anywhere else. And when you look at what feeds our emotion, it's our relationships. And it's our relationship, number one, to ourself, then two, the relationship with others, whether it's professional or personal. And then three, the environments we walk through. We all walk through multiple environments, either on a daily or weekly basis. And each one of those have different demands on us, different roles. And if we're not conscious of how we are and those impact of those environments or relationships on ourselves, we're going to be running into a lot of energy drains, which impact performance, whether you're a student athlete, or a professional hockey player. And when you don't have skills to lean on, yet you think you got it, or you just had these natural gifts, well, informal skills only go so far. You end up running into your subconscious, garbage at some point or another, and you got to look at it. If you don't, that's fine. You're just going to have limitations in your life. And when you go back to that original question about COVID and influence, people are reaching out to me more than ever because I really believe COVID is an opportunity, and it's been an opportunity to look inward, just like everything forced us back into our homes and forced us back into this cocoon. That's really a sort of a more collective view of looking inward. We had to look at those relationships. We had to look at ourselves outside of our patterns. And there is an opportunity. And so one of my coaching things is literally everything is an opportunity. And when you can come from an emotional space of appreciation over and over, gratitude and appreciation are real close together on that spectrum. When you have that anchor of appreciation, you just appreciate the challenges in life too, because they're asking more of you. They're asking you to change or alter or just see what's really meaningful and what are your values. So yeah, I mean, if we don't look at it and we look at, oh, this external world is causing me to feel a certain way. No. That external world isn't crawling into your body and playing with the mechanics of your emotions and mind. No, that's you. So this is really a big part of teaching real easy skills about how to just navigate the relationship with self. Because if you invest in that relationship, you will have much more influence with the relationship with others and those various environments you walk through. But if you don't, usually most people let those other two relationships dictate the relationship with self.
Well, like when I think back to when we first met, I would say simply due to the competitiveness of pro hockey and how ambitious I was and the accessibility to role models, our inputs eventually equate our outputs, right? And I was very conscious about creating the best inputs I could. I would train with the best. I would skate with the best if I could. My effort was always at a high level. But what I recognized was in other areas of my life, I was very unconscious about my inputs, how I breathed, how I talked to myself, how I, related to others, particularly in times of stress, right? When I wasn't playing well, I'd be mopey, I'd be moody, I'd be hard to be around, food wouldn't taste as good. And all of a sudden, sort of this, people don't like to sit there and think of, deal with the responsibility of this. But this is something I know we talked about was, Connor, have there been times of extreme stress in your career where in your own mind, you've handled it, let's call it well. You were resilient. You saw the mistake. You understood kind of what caused it. You understood, how best to avoid it next time. And you moved on and you approached the next shift, whether that be, going home from the rink that day or literally just the next shift with a freshness, right? Without that hangover from the mistake. And I really, if you're willing to admit that there's times you've done that well, then by definition, there's counter data, there's counterpoints to say that, well, then there's obviously times in comparison to that, you've struggled. I've struggled. And these were conversations I'd had because I'd come to you throwing fits. I got a tough coach. I got injured this year. I got, every player said it. I got fucked.
Yeah.
Right. I'm getting screwed
over and over again. Yes.
And I don't want to say I'm on the other side of it now, but really it did force me to change. It did force me to, Connor, you're talking to yourself so negatively. And now you've got this compounded effect of this coach who's talking to you so negatively. Now it's too much. I used to be able to handle it when it was just me, right? I had the supportive coach. And this is figurative. It really can place anywhere in my career. But all of a sudden, when I had both bad guys in my head, I was peeling at the seams.
Yeah, and that I just think it doesn't take much. You think you're resilient, and just one more thing on your plate can you can have a meltdown. And I dealt with that recently in February, where I'm really good at my self practice and managing my stress. But I bought a house. My car was, all these sequences, a couple huge snowstorms. Work was sort of challenging. I had some personal family things going on. And then all of a sudden, there was a hit and run on my car, and my car got totaled. And that one little thing of like my car being inaccessible, which was like something so simple, but it impacted my, getting my kids to hockey and doing the other. My stress levels just melted down. And it took a while to recover, but I just think we seem to be doing okay. Then something happens and one more thing pushes us over the edge. And that just goes back to, you don't have structure in place, you don't have skills, you don't have a support network, a vulnerability exposure, like a person you can really bounce how you're feeling off of. Those things are really imperative to navigating these challenging times. For me, it lasted a month. Other people last years, and they don't feel like they can really be vulnerable to who they are. And in sports, there's just this burden that has become bigger and bigger every year. And I see this with the players I work with, from social media to the influence of their agents and other people outside, like expecting them to be a certain way. And this is a theme I want the listeners to really understand in their lives, that expectations is an old operating system. It runs in all of us. It's like it's just an old operating system, and we can't get rid of it. And what do you think is a byproduct of expectations, like emotionally? You have expectations, and you don't meet those. What do you feel?
Heaviness, like you've let your tribe down, like you're falling short of your potential, like you're failing, like you're drowning.
And there's disappointment. Disappointment's like a really strong, it walks hand in hand with expectations. And that's fine. And that's okay. It's just what it is. Now, a higher vibration or upgrade to that program is to take expectations, move it out of the way, and replace it with something else. And if you're going to do that, what do you replace expectations with? You replace it with trust and faith. So expectations will be there. Your coaches will put them on you. You will put yourself, but they have this depleting effect. Oh man, pressure, disappointment if I don't do it, because you're bound to not meet your expectations. It's going to happen. But if you can acknowledge, okay, wait a second, what if I just put my energy on trust and faith? That I have trust in myself and who I am and how I show up. I have faith in this positive future, that no matter what comes my way, I have this ability to overcome it and meet it and use it as an opportunity. That is a much higher upgrade to the program of expectations. That's going to be there, but hey, if I step up and I start to just feed the trust in myself, feed the trust in the people around me, feed the faith in the positive future, guess what? All of a sudden, I lean on that a lot more than like, oh, I disappointed myself. Oh, I let my team down. Oh, instead, you know what? I got this. I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay, but I trust that I'm going to survive and I'm going to thrive. I'm going to do well. That's a different mindset. That's a different operating system. And it's a much more high resonant, positive approach to this. Yeah. Does that make sense? Can you understand that part?
Well, yeah, it does. And let's talk a little bit about what are some of the tells for you personally when you are living in your head, and what does that sound and feel like versus when you are living in your heart from a place of self-compassion and self-trust. Like, what are some of the tells that what are some of the feelings that go along with both? And then underneath that, of course, are tools, right? Whether it's, getting your shoes off, getting outside, a great, breathwork session. And sometimes what I find is it's just something about that capital R, like resistance. Usually you're least likely to take the medicine that you need when you need it, right? Like when you're so stuck in your head and you're analyzing the death of what went wrong and why someone didn't call for the puck on this play and how could I have missed this? Coach had warned us in the pre-scout of this, face-off play. That's when you're least likely to take your medicine. So, that's kind of climbing the emotional ladder, right? Is understanding, am I operating from a place of trust? Am I operating from a place of fear? Even recognizing that there are those two different zones. That's a skill in its own right. And then finding ways to elevate, finding ways to shift. How do you do this personally?
I think I've had enough skill of, everything takes practice to build the not only the neuroplasticity, but how we feel our body. Listen, there's more information going to the brain than the brain is going to the body. Like this is proven in science. The number one input to the brain is the heart. Literally, the heart develops and is responsible for the fetal development. Brain is a secondary process there. And so with that, what we get into is these thought patterns that are always going to be there. This input, output, data matching brain thought forms. Like we're just chasing thought after thought. We're ruminating when we're in that. We're here, and then we jump to this thought and that thought, and it's chaos, right? And so when we're so identifying with what we're thinking, that's a point where hopefully you have some awareness that, wow, I'm in thought. And guess what? This thought is causing me, I'm really responding in stress to this thought. This person's upsetting me. What they said I don't like. Oh my gosh, I messed up. I'm think. You're ruminating. So for me, I just have the skills, and I've developed the skills where I'm like, wait a second. This thought is causing me stress. What am I feeling? And I call this the U technique. This is a great technique. I'm caught up in thought, and it's creating some sort of stress level. What am I thinking? Okay, great. I drop down into my heart. What is this thought making me feel? It's making me feel some upset of some form, overwhelmed, frustration, resentful, irritated. It could be a bunch of things, insecure, shame even. What would I rather feel? And I take a couple breaths in, and I say, you know what? I'd rather feel balanced. I'd rather feel accepting. I'd rather feel patient. I'd rather feel joy. And I breathe that into my heart in literally a breath or two. Go back up to my head. What am I thinking now? How am I seeing this situation through that different feeling state? And all of a sudden it changes and morphs. But if we're trying to jump around in our thoughts to create change, what that really sets us up for is suppression, repression, and depression. We're really just thinking or talking our way out of it, but we're not really acknowledging this undercurrent of emotions that really drives the ship. It's the fuel. And I think people get scared to move. They feel like they don't have time to feel. I don't have time to feel this right now. I don't have time to deal with this. But the reality is that's where you can quickly shift and be much more resilient. Our emotions are where that resilience really can shift the feeling state, and our mind responds instantaneous. But if we're trying to move it around in our mind, that depleting emotion can sit and hover there. That overwhelm, that anxiety, think about how many people have anxiety now. Everybody's got anxiety, but they don't know what it is. It's just anxiety. And they sit there and, I just have anxiety. They just don't even deal with it. But if they spent time here and actually just felt and just breathed and shifted the way they're feeling, they could probably start to harness it and come to grips with it a lot more. So it's tricky, but again, it takes time to practice those skills. But breath and awareness are the number one ways to get there.
I think I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think it was Albert Einstein. It's like a problem cannot be solved by the same consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times when I'm stuck in thought, that's what I will think to interrupt the hamster wheel. Right. Like I used to joke, I got a hamster upstairs that's, got legs on him. Like this motherfucker just wants to run all day. You know what I mean? Like he just wants to spin up in thought. And there's great chaos and spontaneity and creativity up here. And again, talking about this integration, it's something that I really accept as a superpower, but it comes with a cost, right? Similar like the Queen's Gambit. There's that awesome scene. Have you seen that show yet?
I love that show. That's a great show.
Where the teacher provides the coin and he's like, here's your gift and here's what it costs, right? And then if I can, my heart the big mind, the big Connor, the Connor with perspective. What would 10-year-old Connor think of me, and what would 100-year-old Connor think of the situation? When you when you add those two perspectives, the voice gets really clear. The message becomes really consistent. Mm-hmm. And generally it's, Connor, enjoy this. See where this is happening for you. This too, it really will pass, good or bad. Show up and do your best. And you know what that looks like. Period, full stop. That happens in my relationship. That happens with my work. It definitely happens with Charlie now. I got a little baby that, cries at 2, 4, and 6 to be fed, and the second thing that really tells me stress is not our foe, right? Stress can be a great catalyst for growth, right? It can be a kick in the butt. Like, hey, you need more. Physically, you need to apply stress so that you can become bigger, faster, stronger, right? We know this from a physical standpoint. From a mental standpoint, my tell on whether stress is serving me or not, there's been periods in my life, and let's call this overwhelm, where I have my goal list, my to-do list, whatever it is. Train, take the dog out, prepare for a podcast. I will become stressed out whether I do it or don't do it. There is no win. It's irrelevant. If I have to do it, it feels like work. It feels like stress, right? Then there's this other place where I'm more compassionate, I'm more big-minded, I'm not squeezing. And that's where I am comfortable both handling the task or leaving it be. And that's when I know I'm doing a really good job managing my barrel of stress, right? You don't want to have a 5-pound sausage and a 3-pound skin, right? It'll explode. So if your stress barrel can only handle so much, and like you said, you just add that one little cherry on top, and the surface tension boils over, you're in trouble. And so, that's been, being able to recognize that difference has been super important. And then once I just am able to locate, then I can go into my toolbox and go, okay, I want to sauna for a bit. I want to do a breathwork session. And let's focus on that one real quick, just because this will come out after the Oxygen Advantage podcast with Patrick. We utilize nasal breathing in our techniques, but we also use some of the big open mouth breathing to purposely, like we just talked about, go into these states of stress, these states of hyperventilation, to sort of reorganize some things. Why do we do that?
Well, two things. There's two ways to breathe, the nose and the mouth, right? The nose is about control. We're trying to control processes in our body, control our mind, control. That's why we do want to breathe through our nose, the majority of our experience. Now, why would we breathe through the mouth when, say, scientifically it shows that's not the efficient way? Don't do it. Like, there's other ways to do it. Like, make sure you breathe through the nose. I get it. And so most of the tools I teach for mental programming and body control and emotional control is through the nose. However, mouth-based breathing is about out of control. And when you look at what is our psyche constantly trying to do, is stay in its homeostasis.
Organize, keep us safe, pattern recognition.
Keep us here. Keep it, and that's good because we want to move forward under control. But when we're looking to shift and get unstuck on something, whether it's mental patterns or emotional holding patterns in our body, or we're stuck in a rut in our life, or physically even, I can't get enough breath, I just feel limited. We got to challenge the body far beyond what it's comfortable. And mouth-based breathing, because one, you unlock the jaw, our emotional sort of our subconscious emotional holding patterns show up in our jaw, our hands, and our glutes, or I should say our pelvic floor. Yeah, that's where we are, clamped down when we're emotionally stressed. And what happens when we're relaxed and having a good time? Oh yeah, great. Your jaw's wide open, right? But when we breathe through the mouth and we're taking in these fuller, deeper breaths, and we're not using our body in exercise or in movement, we can just allow, one, our body to take in a lot of oxygen. We can also allow our body to start to feel free to let go. And it's our mouth is open, energy can move out from crying, laughing, saying what you need to say, to again, putting our body way outside of its comfort zone. Because what will happen, especially like the WIMhof method, he's like fuller, deeper. And he usually stops after 30 or 60 breaths. But if you went on for 45 to 60 minutes doing that breath, your body's going to be buzzing and tingling. You're going to be having emotional releases, all sorts of crazy stuff, because your body's so far outside of its homeostasis. You let go of control. And it serves a purpose, especially when guided and in support with somebody. But to go do that on your own, yeah, you're probably going to stop after 10 or 15 minutes. Your body just is going to stop. But when you're guided by a coach, you really transcend that and have these altered experiences. I mean, many people are like, wow, this feels way like I've done drugs or something. I'm like, yeah, because it takes you so far outside of your homeostasis. And more importantly, this vibration, it gives you a different access to what energy really feels like in the body. And that's a really cool thing. And I know you experience a lot of that in sessions.
Yeah, I have. And there is a purposeful point in going into these stressful states. We can go there and train there, under the guidance of a coach, and kind of sort through it. It's interesting because I have read that about a lot of the Wim Hof and things like that. It's sort of a trigger, right? Like, when else in your life have you hyperventilated? When else have you taken in that type of oxygen, either in super intense exercise, which I'm fortunate to do and have. A lot of people don't experience those states for, 20, 30, 40 years. Or when you're really emotional, you feel you've been wronged, or, something's really struck a chord with you. And it really is like you use the word drug or like altered experience. It chemically, the CO2 oxygen ratio in your body is so different from, like you said, homeostasis. It really is a different access point. It's an opportunity to sort of move things. And I was going through this I was talking to my dad the other day just about, physical health and that kind of thing. And I forget where I'd read the study, but it was talking about the therapy of back pain, right? Which is a chronic issue in the United States. And this is kind of a side tangent, but it was saying that in head-to-head studies that physical therapy was outperformed by like clinical psychology sessions, counseling sessions when it came to back pain. Literally like emotional discourse, unloading outperformed, physical exercise, which is wild, right? Because you would think of, okay, I have back pain. That's a mechanical issue. But, for a lot of people, like I don't want to say throw my mom under the bus, but I'll use my mom, for example, right? My mom growing up would say, oh, Connor, as a kid, can you rub my neck? I've been, really, I'm so worked up. My neck is so tight. Well, if energy is neither created nor destroyed, and your life hasn't changed, and we can agree that stress is like this energy force, if all you've been doing is going to work, doing mom stuff, laundry, that was my mom's role in the house growing up, dishes, taking the dogs for a walk, where is this neck pain coming from? Like, you didn't all of a sudden take up CrossFit, mom, right? For example. And then I'm just using someone in my life as an example. And it's because this stress is building up somewhere. It's accumulating. There's a tell of this, physical trauma. And I felt it, where your tongue's real clenched, you're serious, right? we use the term, here, I'll use myself, vacation face. A lot of times as well.
We talked about that. You don't remember after our breath sessions, I'm like, oh, there's vacation face.
And it's interesting. There was a massage therapist in Washington. I swear to God, this is a true story. So it was my rookie year. I'm a 19-year-old punk on a very veteran team. It was positive trauma. I was very excited to be in the NHL, but it was stressful, right? Like I had the spotlight theory. I thought I was being judged at all times. I was being watched at all times. And, I didn't have the leash with myself personally to be light, right? Everything was serious. It was like this. It was like this all the time, right? Like I was at Home Depot trying to figure out what hammer I wanted to buy, right? And the massage therapist, swear to God, he came up to me and he touched my forehead. He's like, dude, relax this.
Yeah.
Like, calm down. Calm down. And a lot of times with the extended breathwork sessions that we've done, I mean, we've gone on 45, 60, 80-minute sessions before. All like the subconscious muscles in your face just melt. And if this sounds a little woo to our listener, like think about it. Think about it in your life. Think about the times where someone took a legitimate, candid snapshot of you at, a family party where you're dying laughing. Your uncle or aunt said a hysterical story, right? And there's this full face smile versus, school pictures. Go ahead and smile. And they look different. There's something physically there.
One of the biggest inputs into our brain on what our brain does is facial muscles. So you got heart influence, nervous system, autonomic nervous system input, and facial muscles to like dramatically impact what the brain decides to do. It's really fascinating.
It is.
And so, going real quick, going back to the back pain of your dad, Dr. John Sarnow, doctor out of New York City, has done thousands of studies, probably tens of thousands at this point, on how the nervous system reroutes emotions and into holding patterns in the body. And he talks about low back pain being infantile narcissistic rage. That like little baby that's like, just that, because we all have rage in us, but how often are we expressing that rage? No, we aren't ever allowed that. A little baby oftentimes will just like, it'll go and then it'll move on and then it's on to the next thing. But we don't get the capacity, or we've limited ourselves in our emotional expression, and we don't know how to ask for our needs. And this is why these dysfunctional relationships for a lot of people end up, because you don't know how to ask for what you need, and which is oftentimes just space to express yourself and be heard, and not have somebody tell you your feelings are wrong, or that you can't feel like that. You're a guy, or just choke it down. You got to perform. Like there's really this emotional well-being that's at the foundation of mental health. Everybody talks about mental health. I say it's emotional health feeding the mental health crisis. What happens in our heart, if that's not dealt with, that is the biggest influencer at what part of our brain we're looping around. And with all the autonomic or autoimmune issues, it's an epidemic in autoimmune issues these days. Everybody's got a mini autoimmune issue. And so much of that is they're finding it has a lot of it in the limbic system where our emotions, our memories are stored. And again, going back to, we can do this healing of trauma and trauma healing. We're all walking. Every human being around you is a walking trauma. We are. We can't get away from it. It just is. Every human. It's just expressed differently. And how those symptoms or how those ways is just different for every person. But going back to it, it's just, I really think this emotional intelligence, social emotional intelligence, is the future of performance. When you look at performance, you're like this biohacker. You're always looking for the next edge and trying to bring up important conversations around being human, human performance. And I really think it's those formal skills of learning how to have a hard conversation, how to get your needs met in healthy ways in relationships, how to honor what you're feeling and own your own emotions, how to be able to create healthy boundaries with people in your life. I mean, you know how many professional athletes blow their money, you know, or they let everything outside themselves dictate how they feel about themselves. That's unhealthy. Or they sit there and they don't have any boundaries about how they relate to themselves. About, you know what, I'm done talking to myself like that. Or I'll only talk to myself like that in these moments. Not all day long, just beating myself up in shame, or I'm not good, or oh man, I hope I can do this. I mean, that's really so much of my coaching, especially from high schoolers to this, everybody trying to jump to the next level in hockey. They're floundering here with this coach. Or all I'm doing is giving them a mirror and asking questions, or giving them some skills that they can just access and empower themselves back to, you know what? I am that 10-year-old kid. I am that 5. I haven't changed. Like, how can I access that true sense of self? And that's my true power. And as soon as I try to be something else and somebody different, I'm stretching. I'm being inauthentic. I'm losing energy, holding up this false image. When I can have this courage to just be me, and I got trust. I got faith. I can be more, and I'm ready to take that on. Sounds really easy. It just is helpful when you have somebody to really reflect back that it's okay. You're okay. It's okay to feel upset. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. But if you're running around chasing in your mind, I think you're just going to continue to chase it. You drop down into your heart, do some breathing in your heart, acknowledge really what I'm feeling, and that's okay. But I can shift it in my heart. Your heart has its own intelligence, its own brain. It literally, that's how it is showing that the science is showing that it has its own neurological memory and ability to think and feel. It is our intuitive center. And when I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and CEOs and those executives, so many of their decisions end up coming down to that intuitive decision that what really feels right. And I think that's the thing we got to get back to is, oh man, when I know it feels right, that's the direction I go.
I want to talk a little bit about your work with, is it Mark Divine with the Unbeatable Mind?
Mark Divine, yes.
Because a lot of this can be coined as mental health or, male vulnerability, right? We're two, grown men trying to talk about how we feel and how we process stress, right? These are things that, old school hockey players would have been a little bit more private with, right? It would have been a tell of weakness. And I kind of, what do those in marketing do, right? When Under Armour has a big new product, they go and they tell, here, Bryce Harper, wear this gym shoe and everyone will think it's cool, right? And it's like, that's why I'm grateful for people like, you're a hockey player. Mark Divine as a Navy SEAL is out there championing this work. And I think it's a great marketing tool, really, because who's tougher than Navy SEALs? Like world-renowned badasses. And these guys are starting to discuss, where's your HRV? Where's your heart zone? Are you thinking big picture? Are you processing your stress? Because they recognize, if their autonomic nervous system's out of whack, their entire skill set's out of whack, their ability to decision make, their ability to execute upon those decisions that they're making subconsciously or consciously. So in terms of your training with the Unbeatable Mind with Mark, what are some of your favorite principles that you've been able to develop since getting to know him a bit?
Well, I think the biggest one that I really resonate from is that when these 5 plateaus, and as you go from the plateaus in your human development, if you can get to that 5th plateau, that's being a world-centric leader. And we're trying to really support people to be world-centric leaders in the way they think, and that every decision they make and how they interact really has an influence on the world around them, the products you buy, the way you communicate with people you don't know versus people you do know, like your decisions on where you take your company. All those things really come down to that each of us has this capacity, whether we got a small little social network, whether we're just a student, whether I shouldn't say just a student, but if we're a student to running a high level corporation, when you get to that level of being a world centric leader, you really are recognizing that every decision I make has an influence on the environment around me. And how do I want to lead? How do I want to lead? And to be a real leader, you got to look at the aspects of your life. You got to own that. And one of the biggest drivers is the emotional mountain. So they have 5 mountains that he runs by. These 5 mountains are parts of your life that you really want to spend time in and develop skills and develop practices. Obviously, the physical mountain we know very, very well. Lots of people are in great shape and struggling emotionally. We know this. So the next one is emotional mountain. That's a lifelong process. Your emotional development, your emotional understanding, your ability to navigate your emotions, how they show up in your life. Third mountain is your mental mountain. How are you challenging your thought processes, your stories, your narratives? In my social emotional, I'm a partner in a social emotional training company. We say, know your story and get bigger than it. If you're not getting bigger than your story, like if you just keep repeating your story, that's a victim attitude. You got to get bigger than being a victim. Recognizing when you're being a victim, when you're playing that victim card, or when you're being a bully, or when you come from this trauma in the background, don't let that define you. Use it as to get bigger than yourself. So on the mental skills, and where do I want to go? Like what really am I curious about? What really, when I'm reflecting on life, or I go to social media, or I read books in a bookstore or magazine shelf, what am I drawn to? Let that be the path, because that's calling into your values and your true curiosities. Fourth mountain, intuitive mountain. That's the ability to think, that's another term of spirituality. What's the part of me that allows life, accesses this deeper meaningfulness to me? What really calls this aspect of bigger sort of synchronicities in life? Like, what's going to nurture that? Well, I can tell you, number one, which you know with me, nature. Are you getting in nature? Are you getting outside and getting away from the noise, getting away from stressors? Are you being in reflective thought? Are you getting in places that just allow your mind to wander? That's going to give you access to that intuitive mountain. And then the fifth one is Kokoro. Kokoro is really how you're combining your heart-mind integration into activity in life. How are you showing up? Are you volunteering? Are you influencing others in really positive ways? Just how do you want to impact the life? And those 5 mountains, when looked at, start to drive you forward in life towards a more meaningful, purposeful life.
Yeah, I really like how do you say that? Kokora, the last one?
Kokoro, yeah. Kokora.
It's beautiful in that it really reminds me of the armed forces concept of like decentralized command, right? For everything to start from the top and run like rainwater all the way down to the bottom to every last person on the field. That's so slow. That's so clunky. But if we can decentralize command and allow people to trust their training, to trust their instinct and make real-time decisions on the ground, there's such a flow of leadership that there are no kinks in the hose. And this is something that, with this podcast, I really try to champion is, and this is where the heart zone I think is so important. We were all raised in school and by mom and dad for the most part with really similar ideals. I don't think, not to criticize the leaders in our lives growing up, but I don't think a lot of their thoughts were tremendously original. And that's okay, because the ones they were regurgitating are really tried and true. Work hard, be a good person, do something that you love. And we can keep going, but a lot of this gets lost. And I've seen it with teammates of mine. I've done it myself, where all of a sudden you're going through a bad stretch and all those key ideals have gone out the window, and all you can focus on is execution. All you care about is the pass fail. Did I play good? Did I not? And it's not a learning experience. It's just, it was a failure or a success. And neither of which do you actually feel you're leveraging and bringing with you as an asset to the next bout, right? It's strictly a momentum builder or momentum killer, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of Kokora is like, I have two younger brothers, and I try to speak to them in a way that someone that loves them and knows them well would. And very similarly, like, think about the tree of people that Blake and Hunter, that you both influence. Think about all the people that particularly in hockey. That's the realm we share the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the teams indirectly Pierre Debar has influenced strictly through your work.
Yeah, right.
Directly, for sure, a lot, right? I know, a lot of the Blackhawks that you see, a lot of the university kids, the junior players. But now, if you're with a captain of a USHL team, and then you're with, a couple players from the University of Wisconsin and a couple key players for the Chicago Blackhawks, think about, and they're at all of these institutions, all of these clubs for years, the web of players that you've been able to affect. And I want to commend you for that, because, really as I transitioned in our relationship from, okay, this guy is a, fantastic body therapist that can help me feel better for my back squat tomorrow, which was great. And I needed that at the time. And I appreciate your skill set there. But when I really recognized that, these are going to be lifelong leadership learning moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really going to be able to train my inner trust, my inner belief. I had this conversation. This is interesting. I had a conversation with Roland Pankowicz, who I have, consult with on the nutrition side. And we were talking about this biohacking nature of myself, right? And it was Connor, like, at some point, you got to quit looking under like every single rock. He's like, what are you looking for? He's like, there's no magic pill. He's like, we can take some supplements because food quality isn't what it used to be, for sure. Soil depletion, like all that, that's a real thing. The nutritional value of an apple today isn't what it was 50 years ago. Fine. All right, we'll take some multivitamins and stuff. He goes, but like belief in inner knowing.
Yes.
And trusting that I mean this kind of literally, no matter what, you will be responsible and capable of fostering your own safety. He goes, that's more powerful than any food I can prescribe, than any, switch from tap water to distilled hydrogen, whatever water. And it really clicked. It really started to click that, that belief muscle is really what, connects us from, fingertips to our toes to the top of our head.
If you go back and listen to this podcast, you're going to see, I started out with the trust and faith, right? The expectation, shifting from that to up leveling to trust and faith in self, and having that be a focal point. You've spoken to that multiple ways on this talk already, and that being another example right there you just gave of having trust and faith. Like, he's challenging, just trust yourself that you got this, that you will make good choices, that you will be mindful that the world will unfold for you and how you're ready. You will be met with enough challenge to cause you to move. You will have enough support, and if you have too much of one, you just go look. Some support will show up. If you have too much support, some challenge will show up. That you'll constantly be moving forward, but to trust and have faith in self that you're going to be moving forward. That's exactly. And it triggers. had the privilege of working with the U.S. World Junior team before during the tournament this year, when they smoked the Canadians in that gold medal game. And if you watch that game, you can see the trust and faith. That was the theme I said. And what feeds trust and faith is appreciation of yourself, appreciation of the people in your life, your teammates, the role each person has, and have an appreciation for that role is as important as the dude that snipes goals. Like, having that appreciation raises it, and now I trust those people around me and have faith in this. And it's the same thing. I've been working with the Wisconsin men's hockey program. Trust and faith in each other. When you start to erode, and when behavior starts to get away from that, people start to act in ways that makes you not trust them, right? That happens on teams. You see this all the time. If you don't have the skills about being able to speak to that behavior and how to help them back in line so you can trust them again, it's just going to erode a team. And so a lot of the work I did with the Badger program is to help support this structure, these formal structures that help speak to behavior and get them back in line, so then you can trust them again. They can trust themselves. They can have faith in each other. And that's that social emotional skill sets that are really the frontier of the next level of performance. Is that, hey, I'm an individual, I'm working on these things, but if I'm in my reptilian brain, because I'm upset, overwhelmed, got anxiety, that's not keeping me up here. That's keeping me back in this part of the brain. It's keeping me in the lower quadrant. For me to be in a flow state and to think the game at a high level and be at my best, I need to be the front part of my brain. And that means I got to acknowledge what I'm feeling. Because if I'm in the depleting emotions, that's going to keep me back here. I got to shift into these positive, renewing emotions. And all of a sudden, I can access that higher state. Or if I'm in a relationship and I'm upset going into a hard conversation, guess what? You're probably going to get a little upset back. You're going to get this reflection. So how can I shift myself to a balanced, calm state when I go into a difficult conversation, so I can navigate that properly rather than have it blow up in my face? So there's a lot of ways of learning these skills about what are my emotions, how's it impacting my brain, and then how do I establish healthy boundaries and communication strategies. That's where sports is going. That's where, if you look at athletic departments, they're starting to look at how can we help support the student athletes and their mental and emotional well-being. How can we give them skills so they're productive citizens after they graduate college? How can we start to work as an organization to honor these dysfunctional patterns and start to bring them and be more efficient and effective? Like, that's all social emotional. That's all relationship based stuff at the end of the day. And again, that's the future of performance, and that's my vision of where I'm going to.
Well, it can sound complicated or inaccessible sometimes, but it really is pretty binary. Are you not breathing, or are you breathing? Are you fearful, or are you operating from a place of trust? Are you unconscious about how you're going through your day and fostering your outputs or your inputs, which will eventually lead to your outputs? Or are you conscious in trying to put together what this living being wants to show up as? And when, at least for me anyway, when it becomes that black and white, and when it becomes that as clear as pass fail, because very quick, I become very quick to identify where I'm at, and it becomes very clear on where I want to get to. And that's been, if I, can distill, the three lessons that we work on together most. And it's so funny how it really is full circle, right? Like, are we discussing anything that, ancient wisdom hasn't already tried to tackle? Whether you look at, the Bible, Buddhism, I read some of the Stoicism books, like
Native American culture. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're not discovering anything particularly profound, which shows the difficulty in mastery, that this is still a conversation humans are having after all this time. But it also shows, at least for me, how worthwhile engaging with that work is, because it's as true as time.
It's meaningful work. And that's a good question to ask yourself. And I'll ask people, even, high-level executives, I'll ask, what was the last meaningful thing you did? And what did it ask of you to do it? And that's starting to access that heart. Because when meaningful things come up, you're accessing the heart wisdom. You're accessing things that mean something of value to you. And that's worthy of reflection on. What was the last meaningful thing you did? Maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was a month ago, maybe it was 10 years ago. Well, that's telling you something, you're off track. That's going to give you a kind of the compass. And I'll say, listen, if we're guiding our compass is our brain trying to think our way to our destination, guess what? You're going to be zigzagging all over the place. You come down into your heart and anchor your compass in your heart. What's meaningful to me? What is important to me? And have your compass start there. Guess what? Now you can have your brain follow that, and you're going to have a sharper, stronger, probably more precise vision of where you want to go. Because you're accessing the heart qualities and having your mind support those heart qualities towards action. That's Kokoro. It's Kokoro living.
If it was socially acceptable, I'd get that tattooed on my fucking forehead. Like, what's the last meaningful thing you did? Who are you? Who do you want to be? Where am I going?
There's just, again, this could turn into a 10-part series, which you and I have talked about creating a program for all your listeners and other athletes. But let me kind of just put a couple things. I know we're sort of starting to get towards the end of this, but I think there's a couple tidbits that are important for the listeners to understand from my perspective. Sort of winning habits that are simple but change your life. So just electrically how we are. We're the most sophisticated piece of electronic equipment on Earth. And high sophisticated electronic equipment needs to be grounded to operate at its best. Because if it gets a surge of energy through the network, it can blow it, right? And then all of a sudden the computer's not working, the TV's done, the radio doesn't work anymore, whatever it is. Here we are, nobody's touching the earth. Nobody's grounded. And so what happens is voltage builds up at the top of our head and the energy is being drawn up here. So you wonder why we're always in our head. Yet when you touch your feet to the ground, get in the grass, get into the beach, touch the dirt, all of a sudden your voltage discharges, you become grounded. And if you notice and become aware, you all of a sudden go, that feels good. I feel better. I'm thinking better. I'm more grounded. I'm more drawn down. And so really one of my big winning habits is get into nature, touch nature, connect with this bigger essence. When we're in nature, it gives us a really good reflection of ourselves. We reflect the thought. Go into alpha brainwave states a lot easier, which is more that meditative sort of vacation face you're looking for. That's a winning habit. And again, looking for moving electrical energy, moving human energy, moving just discharging. It's great. Second thing is breath. Are you consciously breathing? So a couple of the easy techniques you can go with. 4, 7, 8. Breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 7, exhaling for 8 seconds. 4, 7, 8. That's a great one by Dr. Andrew Weil. You do what Mark Divine has made very popular is box breathing. Breathing in for a count of 4 or 5 seconds, holding 5 seconds, exhaling for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, around at 10. Or just simply what you referenced earlier. When you get stressed, when you recognize you're holding tension, when you're upset, breathing into the sides of your body, breathing into the sides of your ribs, your armpits, just getting any sense of movement in lateral expansion of your rib cage and the lateral parts of your body. that impacts your diaphragm, your autonomic nervous system immediately. It starts to train you. Those are two huge ones. And then, of course, the third one being is do things that create kairos. Kairos is the artist mind. We're so wrapped up in digital. We just so quickly grab our phones and so quickly look for these distracting things. What happens when we don't do that? Just reflect or choose to do things where time becomes abstract. That's the difference between chronos, which is like really like digital time and having finite time, compared to kairos, which is sort of expanded time. And if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling challenged, go find some kairos time. What draws it up? Some people it's fishing, some people it's going for a long walk, some people it's exercise, whatever that is. I find good, deep, wandering, curious conversation states of kairos too. We're always saying, man, that was an awesome conversation. We just got into it for a long time, and look at that, an hour went by. Kairos can be in human interaction as well. So those are sort of three foundational things that start to honor the emotions, start to ground our emotions, start to access the deeper wisdom within us, get us out of our mind, that chatter that is really kind of where so much of our self-created problems end.
Pierre, this was awesome. I off day today for me as we played in Hershey on the road last night, and I had sort of the three P's of an awesome off day. I had pancakes this morning, I had a pour over coffee, and I had a podcast with Pierre. And
it's more there, PP podcast.
That's it. It's mm-hmm. Beautiful outside here, so I'm gonna go get some kairos time in. I'm gonna get the shoes off. In a park here in your honor. Johnny Moore, by the way, says hi. I saw him a couple weeks ago in Boston. We were talking about you. Pierre, this is awesome. I appreciate, every time we talk, I feel like I know myself better, and you help me remind me of what I'm trying to do and not even what I'm trying to do, but what's actually natural for me. So I really appreciate that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
And let me just, finish by honoring you. I just want to honor you that you have taken on your challenges over and over again and tried to find the golden feather or the silver lining in all of them, and not let them define you, but really look inward to see how they can serve you in your growth. And you've also you've created a platform to really support others in their development. And this is only the beginning. I still see this as like the infancy of your support and of others in the world. And I just want to honor that. And listen, hockey's going to challenge you like your professional career is going to continue to give you your challenges. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for sharing that part of your life with me. So I appreciate you. Appreciate all the listeners listening on this. And you can find me Mental Skills,
awesome.
The Mental Skills Coach on Instagram. You can also follow me on Pierre Debar, Facebook. And eventually I'm developing the mentalskillscoach.com. That's going to be coming out here in the next probably month. So also resources online. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And I can't wait to meet you at the new clinic when we're back home on the other side of the season. And awesome, Pierre. Thank you. I'll do all the Instagram tags and things like that when we release. And this was outstanding. I really appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your Monday. Have a great week, okay?
Thank you, bud.
All right. Be well, Pierre.
Peace.
Thank you. I got to say, thank you to Pierre, first off, for being in my life. I get asked a lot, why I'm a mental health advocate, why I, try to talk about, the self-development space. And I guess I just recognize its power. I recognize how contagious we all are as people. And Pierre has been one of those people in my life. Every hour with him, that we've spent, that's generally how we, sort of schedule our appointments in the summer, say, for example, or even our phone calls if I, want to bug him for some of his time during the season, is a great investment. And I never know, sort of when the return will show itself. Sometimes Pierre and I's work will really settle in and show its beauty and its importance in my life. Middle of a game, I'm playing extremely well, or he's helped me appreciate the beauty of really this entire thing, all the work that's gone behind my career, all the sacrifice that, friends and family have made on my behalf, all the hard work that I've done myself. I've shown up for myself, day in, day out, year in, year out. I've really been a professional since I was 14, in terms of how seriously I take this sport and this game. And, he helps me remember some of the big components as to why I ever got into this game. It wasn't to, make money. It was to make memories. It was to feel the feeling of, a well-executed one-timer, in your hands. It was to feel the beauty of glide underneath my feet with the ice. And I think one of the things I want to highlight as well with Pierre in terms of the reasons why I have come to know and love him so much is he's also an adult that has been a great role model for me, right? So we have these conversations together, he and I. They're a little more dense and heavier in content, but he's also subconsciously, he leads by example, and he is what I would consider to be a playful individual. He has a certain lightness to him, and in contrast to, a very serious, sometimes workplace, a very competitive environment of pro hockey, to meet an adult man in 2021 with his blend of sensitivity with intensity, his ability to both ponder age-old questions and also not take himself so seriously, as he does with he's an adult, for example, still playing hockey, and we'll talk about if he had hit a post the night before, we'll trade frustrations. I'll be like, man, I can't believe in the middle of last season they took me off the power play. And I'll be like, man, I completely agree. I'm totally pissed off at the crossbar last night. My men's league team, we had the game on the line and I missed. And, I think it was because my chi was off, and we'll laugh about that. And, so really I want to take a moment to thank our guests as always for, listening week in, week out, but also to Pierre for his mentorship, both for sure as a spiritual leader, but just as, a modern man willing to, lead by example and be truly himself. He's someone that if you've ever spent time with him, or even, we had an Instagram live, for example, a couple weeks ago, and now this podcast, you can see why he's so infectious and someone that I truly enjoyed spending time with. So thank you again for joining us here on the Curious Competitor podcast. I look forward to throwing down together again next week.